Hey friends, Ash here with Gents, and today I'm coming at you guys with 5 beast mode fragrances that I've been wearing while cooped up at home, like I'm sure a lot of you are right now. Basically, I've been wearing some strong fragrances, partially to annoy my wife, and partially just because I feel like it. And these are those fragrances that I've been wearing. So each one of these off my skin gives me very strong projection and long longevity, yeah. So 8+ hours on the low end for the fragrances that I'm going to be talking about today. Let's go ahead and jump right into this, guys, and start talking about some beast mode fragrances. Now, first off is a fragrance that's been talked about a lot over the years, both on this channel and other YouTube channels, on Fragrantica, on Facebook, on forums, whatever. People have talked about this one. It's one of those fragrances that always makes those cheap fragrances that smell like niche quality, or cheap fragrances that smell like they're expensive. You know the drill. This one is Bentley for Men Intense. And there are actually a number of Bentley fragrances that are very good in terms of their quality and in terms of their performance, and at least from discounters, they're typically very cheap. As long as we're not talking about the new Beyond collection, those are a little bit more expensive, but these, very affordable. And this one actually, you can pick up for under 30 bucks, and I have a couple of bottles of this one. It's maybe not my favorite. Bentley for Men Absolute is right there with this one, and I have to kind of think about it as far as which one I like more, but this is a fantastic fragrance. It's got leather, benzoin, cinnamon, rum, it's got incense, it's got woody notes. There's a lot going on here. This one actually gets compared to Idole de Luban, which is a fragrance that I own. It's a niche fragrance. Also gets compared to Olfactive Studio Chambre Noir. So in that sense, this almost is like a niche quality fragrance for under 30 bucks because it smells very similar to 2 other niche fragrances out there. I own both of those and think that they're both great, and this one is pretty much right there with them. Boozy, smoky, woody, sweet, balsamic. That's how this one comes across. Obviously, this is going to be better suited for fall and winter, and actually pretty much everything I'm going to talk about today is better suited for fall and winter, and that is because, of course, the performance. Typically in the higher heat in summer or spring, you know, you don't want those fragrances that are going to be just monsters because they're going to overpower people. They're going to be too cloying, and people are just not going to like the way they smell, and you actually might not like the way that they smell either because it just overwhelms you. It can give you a headache, and you just don't want to go down that road. I've done it before. You don't want to do it. So yeah, Bentley for Men Intense. I busted this one out yet again. And if you've watched very many videos at all on YouTube, you've heard about that one. So we'll just keep this moving. And the next one actually is another popular fragrance. This one has been talked about a lot also. And this one I reviewed back when it was new, and I didn't give it the best review on earth. It has grown on me. I'll tell you guys why in a second, why this just really didn't strike me in a positive manner when I first got this, but it's this one, Mancera Red Tobacco. I know that my friend Eugene at You Smells Good hates this fragrance, doesn't like it at all, and this one had to grow on me also. The opening is not great. The opening is kind of like a jumble of notes. It's a lot going on, and it almost comes across like the notes are fighting instead of working together. So a lot of people, especially if they haven't smelled very many niche fragrances or very many Mancera fragrances, when they spray this on, they're gonna be like, oh God, what is that? Like, that's just a mess. It doesn't smell like a fragrance. But if you give it more wear, the opening really won't bother you as much anymore. At least that's my experience. It dries down to a warm, rich, sweet tobacco with vanilla and spices. The oud in here is not overpowering, and it's just very, very nice once it dries down. Easy to wear, potential compliment getter, and last forever. It has tobacco, cinnamon, vanilla, patchouli, oud, and saffron. Some of the notes in here. And this one is one of the most popular Mancera fragrances out there nowadays, especially for fall and winter, like I said with the previous fragrance. Even though it's really popular and you will find it on discounters, it's not one of the most heavily discounted Mancera fragrances. Sometimes you can pick Manceras up for like 80 bucks. I've even seen them go for $50 to $60 on discounters sometimes. That one, you're gonna be looking at more like 130 bucks. So it is gonna be, at least from discounters, one of the slightly more expensive Manceras, but I think it's worth it. It's very nice, and the DNA of Mancera Red Tobacco has started to pop up a couple places in other niche fragrances, other niche brands. They've taken a look at this and said, oh, that seems to be selling well, it's popular, let's get something that's a little bit similar but with a twist. I've noticed that with a few different houses. Next up, one of my absolute favorite Tom Ford Private Blend fragrances. Absolutely love this fragrance. I loved it the very first time that I smelled it. It is this one, Tom Ford Tobacco Oud. And this actually was my wife's least favorite fragrance for a while, until she got used to it, because I wore it a lot. It's got tobacco, whiskey, oud, sandalwood, and spices as some of the notes in this fragrance. Like I said, my wife hated this one, despised it. After I wore it, and 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 wore it, she grew to like it. And maybe you should do that too with fragrances that your significant other hates. But just be aware that they might give you some grief. You're gonna have to weather the storm. It's got an almost syrupy sweet booziness to it, which is what really draws you in initially. Smells fantastic. And then you've got a spicy tobacco and oud, obviously, as the fragrance dries down. It's got some vanilla in there, giving you sweetness, and some incense, giving you some smokiness as well. This one would be in my top 5 Tom Ford Private Blends easily, and could very easily crack the top 3, but I'd have to kind of sit down and really think about that one to say for sure. This one, maybe not quite as beast mode as the last 2, but off my skin, it lasts a very long time and projects heavily as well. One of my favorite fall and wintertime fragrances, Tom Ford Tobacco Oud. Next up is a Calvin Klein fragrance. Probably didn't expect to see a Calvin Klein on here, but there is. This fragrance pops on and off from discounters. So it'll show up at FragranceNet or Fragrance X, and it'll be 30, 35 bucks, and then it'll sell out. And for 4 or 5 months, it won't be there at all, and then it'll pop back on there again, and then sell out, and it goes away, and then it comes back on, goes away, on, goes away. You know the drill. This one also for a while was at TJ Maxx and Ross's all across America, but that time has passed and you're probably not gonna find it there now. It's this one, Calvin Klein Liquid Gold Euphoria for Men. And I did review this years back. And at the time, I liked it, but didn't love it. It has grown on me though over the years. So I like it a little bit more now than I did when I did that review. That being said, I didn't hate it back then either. It's always been a solid fragrance. It's got sandalwood, saffron, and black pepper as the notes, and the main one that you're gonna pick up from this is the sandalwood. So it's this really nice, spiced, creamy, woody fragrance. There's a little bit of smokiness in here too. So really, it's a warm, spicy, woody scent. It's not hyper complicated, but the quality here is actually really, really good, especially compared to what you would typically associate with Calvin Klein fragrances. A lot of times Calvin Klein fragrances get written off as smelling cheap, smelling super synthetic, smelling, you know, like a $20 fragrance essentially. But this one is really nice and very well done. A few people have said that they don't get great performance here, that it's more moderate for them. I've noticed, as I've given this more wear over the years, that it actually lasts for a long time off my skin and projects very well also. So that one is kind of like a sleeper beast mode fragrance, one that maybe initially you don't think that it's all that strong until you give it more wear, and then you notice people are picking it up long after you've thought that it's died away. Like the other fragrances in this video, this one is better for cool weather, but out of all the fragrances here, I think this one is the one that you could most easily wear in springtime. Still not something I'd want to wear in summertime necessarily, but this one I could see getting a little use out of in spring, fall, and winter, just not summer. Next up is a fragrance that is extremely high quality, smells great to me. One of my favorite out of this entire list in terms of just the personal smell. And this one is one that I've talked about in the past a few times. It's also more on the expensive side, considering that this is a designer, but it's worth it. It's this one, Gucci Intense Oud. This smells so good to me. It's great. And this one does get compared to Nasimoto's Black Afgano. So there's a little bit of a similarity between that one and this one. And like I said, for a designer fragrance, this is more on that expensive side of things. From discounters, this is like $145, $150, so it's not cheap. It's got olibanum, amber, leather, incense, oud, woody notes, and it's just this fantastic, sweet, dark, smoky, rich, spiced oud fragrance. And this one lasts forever off my skin. This is one that lasts 12 plus hours. This is one that projects like a monster. Just a couple of sprays, you're good to go. And this one is one that is definitely fall and winter only. And for me, really just winter. I don't even bust this one out in the fall, unless it's one of those weird fall days or nights where it's really uncharacteristically cold. Then I could reach for that one, but for the most part, winter only. This is one that has been talked about on YouTube by myself and other people, on Facebook, on forums, but it doesn't really get huge amount of love or hype, whatever you want to call it. It's probably because it's cost prohibitive. Again, it's like $145, $150 from discounters, and at that price, you'd be looking at things like Parfums de Marly or some Creeds even, or Amouages. You can pick up lots of different niche fragrances at discounters in that price range. So I think the cost is part of the reason it doesn't get talked about too much. And then also the fact that it is ultimately a Gucci fragrance. That also works against it a little bit. That one though, like I said, smells fantastic. Great quality, dark, resinous, sweet, spicy oud. Easy to wear. The oud is not funky. It's not fecal, so it's gonna make you smell different than other people out there, especially when we're talking about your average guy. And it's going to last forever and smell of extreme quality at the same time. Gucci Intense Oud, killer fragrance. And I know this is technically 5 beast mode fragrances, but I'm gonna throw a 6th one in here that I've been wearing off and on as well. And it's this one, Amouage Portrayal Man. I picked up a couple of Amouages here over the past month, Portrayal and Imitation. Portrayal is the Amouage fragrance that gets compared to Dior Fahrenheit. So a lot of people will say that this reminds them of Dior Fahrenheit. This one has violet, cade oil, and vetiver, though you could really just say juniper instead of cade. And the violet in here is what makes people draw that comparison to Dior Fahrenheit. Now, Portrayal does have a little bit of that gasoline sort of vibe in the opening of the fragrance, just like Dior Fahrenheit. It's not quite as in your face as the petrol or the gasoline smell in Dior Fahrenheit is. Here, it's a little bit reined in, and it does die away. That petrol, gasoline kind of vibe that you get from the violet. Here in Portrayal, that lasts through the opening, and then it fades away. So after that, this goes in a different direction from Fahrenheit. I don't think that they're similar enough to say, oh, this smells just like Dior Fahrenheit. It doesn't. They're different fragrances. They do have that similarity though with the violet and a little bit of leather in here as well, though that is also more pronounced in Dior Fahrenheit. That one becomes kind of a bitter green fragrance with florals, vetiver, and leather after the opening. So that's the direction that Portrayal takes after that initial kind of violet petrol blast. This is very strong initially, so much so that if I spray on too many sprays, 5, 6 sprays, kind of overwhelms me, and I don't like the way it smells. It's just very thick, cloying, heavy. When I first spray this on, that violet is just like dense. So I don't go too heavy with the atomizer on this one. After a few hours though, it mellows out, settles down, and it's not as much of a projection beast, but it does last a very, very, very long time off my skin. And with this one, I'm Washed Portrayal Man, we'll go ahead and wrap up this video of beast mode fragrances that I've been wearing while basically in isolation here. So now you know some of the fragrances that I've been wearing to annoy my wife. You should do the same. Works out great, trust me. All right guys, that's gonna do it for me. Thanks so much for all of your support. Let me know of these fragrances, which you like the most or dislike the most, and let me know what beast mode fragrances you guys are gonna be wearing in the upcoming weeks. Thanks so much for all your support, guys. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys. Oops.